I have to read all the SPFBO winners from the last 10 years before December so I can rank them in the Champions League. And today we're taking a look at Orconomics by Zachary Pike. This is a satirical fantasy that won the SPFBO 4 award. This is a very unique story, and it has since gained somewhat of a cult following, which is always great to see in the self-published community. This book is all about a dwarf who used to be part of the Heroes Guild, but was disgraced when he ran away from a battle. He accidentally ends up saving a goblin, which is very much against the way of heroes. And he ends up getting blackmailed into joining a band of warriors to go on a farce of a quest. But if he does end up being successful, he may be able to rejoin the Heroes Guild and repair his reputation. So with that context in mind, let's go ahead and dive into this indie review. Let's kick things off with the Immersion, which I gave an 8.5 out of 10. The world itself was super interesting. I really liked the way he painted the various factions. Like, the Heroes Guild is basically just a job for professionals. It's not about being an actual hero. It's about looting as much as you possibly can from evil people and also increasing your hero rankings. And there are other guilds too that are kind of funny. Like, you have the thug guilds that get hired to stand around like goons, and like, it's just funny the different types of guilds that they have. There's also a really good history and kind of setup for this world. We get to see the different classes that's basically based on race. They're split into good and bad, with species like elves and dwarves as the good guys, and goblins and orcs as the bad guys, because of course, everyone knows orcs are bad. Even though this holds actually very little weight in modern society, they still abide by these kind of archaic rules that keep these structures in place. So that was really interesting. Now, my problem with this book is also what makes it really well loved. So, you know, take this with a grain of salt, but my problem came from just the financial institutions in and of themselves, which is where a lot of the satire of this book kind of comes into play. For me, it was just a little bit too on the nose, so it was somewhat distracting from the world building. Like, instead of Goldman Sachs, you have Goldman and Bags, and they are analyzing the stocks, but it's just loot. So for some people, I'm sure they'll love it. For me, it was so line for line of reality that it lost its satire and became more cheap and kind of cheesy and honestly kind of boring. So any of the financial chapters I really struggled with, because I just felt like I was reading a parody of the New York Times as opposed to like actually getting involved in a fun epic adventure. So I did have a hard time with that, but I can see why people like it. It's just not for me. It's too direct as opposed to more of the subtle satires that are folded into some of the other commentary of the book. The names, I gave a 9 out of 10. Gorm Ingerson is the main character that we follow, and he's just great. Very likable. He's a dwarf who's been down on his luck for decades, and he finally has a chance at redemption. He makes friends with a goblin who speaks a completely different language. So they're interacting with each other, and the goblin will say something in a different language, and Gorm will just basically pretend to understand what he's saying, which is kind of funny. And he just has a great arc and progression throughout the story as he kind of grapples with the truth of what it means to actually be a hero. I also really enjoy the group dynamics of this band of heroes. You've got two mages from different factions who absolutely hate each other, a bard who's actually a thief, a former legendary elf who's now just addicted to healing potions, a man who never speaks, and a scribe who is convinced that they are all chosen for this innocuous quest. And then of course I love the antagonists of the story who are propelling them and kind of forcing them to go on these quests despite the fact that they think that they're going to die and that it doesn't matter. So it was fun to see that kind of conflict throughout as well. I loved everything about these characters and the emotional impact that they brought and that they were able to develop throughout the story. The ending was slightly heartbreaking, but I did feel like it was a perfect ending for the story that really gave us a good emotional resolution. The magic, I gave an 8 out of 10. The magic was pretty straightforward, but I don't really have any issue with that. As long as it's executed well, you can have the most basic magic system ever and I'll still enjoy it. So again, you have the two mages with the contrasting abilities. One uses like light and fire, and the other uses like darkness and death. and they have to master the ability to weave magic for control and also balance kind of their raw talent. You also have a ton of interesting creatures throughout this story. Again, you have a bunch of different species, so you get exposed to a lot of different kind of characters and races, which is always fun. You've got creatures like trolls and liches. You have things like healing potions, which can create addictive properties in heroes. You've got shapeshifters, zombies, all kinds of good stuff. Again, nothing that unique per se, but well structured and believable. And it just fit the world very well. Moving on to the infrastructure, which I gave a 9 out of 10. I would say that the first half of the book maybe is a little bit slow, but the second half more than makes up for it. It's well worth it. The second half was so great. And for me, other than really the over-the-top satire with the financial institutions, I'd say it was a nearly perfectly structured story. And the climax and the ending was just so satisfying and had just such a great emotional impact for the reader. So yeah, very steady pacing throughout, great climax, great resolution, really no complaints. And that brings me to my enjoyment score, which I gave an 8.5 out of 10. I can't stress this enough. This is going to be different for everyone. People are going to love this for the on-the-nose satire. For me, this enjoyment score would have been much, much higher if the author had found a way to be a little bit more subtle with the satirical components of the story. But for me, it was just so blatant that it was just no longer a fantasy story, and I want to get into the story to escape those types of things. And I have no issues with messages in stories and themes in stories. I just like them to be folded in a little bit more naturally and organically. But the characters and plot really make up for the stupid chapters of financial satire. That's gonna leave Orconomics with an overall score of 8.6 out of 10. I can absolutely see how this won the SPFBO 4. It's a wonderfully unique approach to fantasy, while still staying mostly true to the elements that readers typically enjoy. So if you want to see a band of loser heroes try to reclaim their honor, then this is going to be a book for you. Now let's go ahead and judge a book by the cover. The cover to me is just okay. It's unique, but it's just too on the nose for my liking. Like, the cover in and of itself is the reason why I've waited so long to get to this book. Like, the cover makes me disinterested in reading this. Like, I don't care about economics or orconomics. Like, I don't want to read about that. And for the most part, those are the issues that I had with the book. What this cover displays is the very things that I took issue with as I was reading. So I kind of see the appeal of it because it's unique, but I don't love it because I think there's so many other super interesting elements to the story that would have lured people into actually wanting to read this more than this cover. But that'll do it for today's video. So if you made it all the way to the end, be sure to join the Indie Fantasy Club. Like the video, share it with your friends, and be sure to stay tuned to see where the other SPFBO winners are ranked amongst these other champions. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.